Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into this episode of Real Talk Fishing with No Limit. Today, we're over in Wisconsin talking to the American angler himself, Nick Shertz. Nick's a very smart dude and is versed in all species and has fished literally across the country and across the world on the American Predator team, World Ice Fishing Championships. I mean, he's been there, he has done it, he's been around for a while. Nick knows his stuff. So, want to learn a little bit about what goes on in these world competitions, you're going to want to listen to this one. So, stay tuned. Got Nick Shertz coming up. We're in late March. It's winter has just snuck its head back in over here in South Dakota. I don't know what it's like over there, but it's kind of sucking.
Yeah, we got a little bit of a teaser. Had some very unseasonably warm weather, and a year on a winter like this where we didn't have a huge cake of ice. Our ice fishing season is a lot shorter than normal, and we lost our ice. Looks like this week. It wouldn't surprise me if we get back out on it by the time things are done, because we're looking at probably a couple days of single digits in the next week here coming up.
Yeah, we were, I think, down to 11 or 12 last night, but the next 3 days are 60, 50, and 40. Our river fishing is going to be fine. It's going to remain open. We're not going to get near that cold 40s. And, with these longer daylight hours, we're good to go. But it's just not it's not as comfy period as the 65 and sunny that we've had most of March. My grass is trying to green up even. We don't have any frost. So that's going to be a little shock, I think, to the system. But ice fishing. So before we get into your world travels, let's let our listeners just know a little bit. If you guys don't know Nick's a hell of an angler, an educator in the angler world. Has been doing this stuff for a long time and has fished damn near every kind of tournament or circuit there is out there, from local, national, and worldwide. So what's what's your journey, or how did you get to where you are today, Nick? And what are you doing when you're not fishing?
All right, so recently I just got back from the 20th World Ice Fishing Championship. That was held in Mongolia. My journey with that started probably in 2014. Actually, the year before, 2013, the U.S. team had hosted, and they hosted in Wausau, which is within an hour from where I live. And I saw a flyer for it when I was actually out to eat with my wife, and she saw it, and she's like, United States ice fishing team. She's like, why aren't you doing that? And I thought, let me look into that.
That's a
So I
good
went down to
question.
that. I went down to that championship to see what it was like, and any preconceived notion I had was wrong. So I'm like, well, they're gonna have a tryout for the 2014 World Ice Fishing Championship, and that one was going to be held in Belarus. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to these tryouts and see what it's all about, right? So I went to those tryouts, and I found out pretty quick at the registration meeting that we were using palm rods and such, targeting. They kind of were looking at, okay, when they've seen some stuff overseas where they're targeting smaller fish. We need to be able to catch every bite, because those tournaments, the World Ice Fishing Championship tournaments, they're run on a total weight basis. So each day they have sectors set up, and you might be catching some bigger fish, but you might have to catch small fish to win your sector. So when they practiced in the US, they were trying to make it to where people are out of their comfort zone catching big fish and being able to catch the small ones as well. So that was kind of a little bit of an eye opener for me, but I was pretty driven and learned and asked a lot of questions and embraced some of the tackle that they handed me to try, and ended up probably placing fifth in that tryout, and I made the team. And it's pretty much since then I've traveled to like Belarus, Finland, Ukraine, Latvia, Kazakhstan, Bulgaria, Estonia, and then this one was in Mongolia. So I've been to about eight world championships, and pretty much have been able to scrape out qualifying to be in that top 5 anglers to fish at every one I've been to. And the team takes 10 guys every year. There's 5 anglers and then 5 spotters, because every angler is in a different sector, and then they'll have a person roaming in the neutral zone outside, kind of be in their eyes for them while they're fishing and telling them what's going on and how they're faring in that day's competition.
That is
So yeah,
interesting
started
as
out
hell.
started out doing that and then kind of fell in love with it. It was, I mean, anybody that knows me, I'm kind of driven by the new. Everyone always asks me, "Where's your favorite place to fish?" And I always kind of say the next place. I'm I like adventure. I like doing new stuff. I like new challenges. I went over there and I watched those people raise those cups and their country's flag for the medal ceremonies, and I'm like, dang, I want to be up on that stage
Yeah.
overseas. And I knew it would be a tall order, and for a lot of us, there's probably two guys up there with me that were there in 14. We do have some turnover because it's expensive and we're more or less self-funded. So it was pretty cool with those guys to say, hey, we stuck with it and we got a medal overseas, because that was our goal all along. So
That is a
pretty
good
awesome
goal.
stuff.
When people say, "What's your favorite place?" and you're going to drop the Mongolia bomb on them, they're just going to be like, "What? Whoa,
Yeah.
I don't. Where's that lake at?" Right?
So this lake in Mongolia we were at, it's Ugi. It's like Ugii. It's pretty impressive. I mean, the fishing was world class. I mean, we obviously post a lot of pictures of the redfin perch, which are really beautiful and they get really big in there. We had fishing practice up to 17 and a half inches, 3 pounds for perch, and
Jeez.
and just gorgeous fish. But the tournament was mostly the European roach, and you know, they kind of look something like a whitefish, travel in big schools, and there was big schools of them. Probably the size range would have been usually in that two or three of them to a pound. So pretty good sized fish. It's like catching panfish over here. And I think
Yeah.
this was the biggest roach we've seen. There was a few perch sprinkled in, but it was mostly a roach tournament. So as far as that goes, fishing roach, a lot of it is not so much about the catching, the actual speed of catching, but it's the feeding techniques. And that's something that we've practiced a lot and learned a lot over the last decade, is how to, you have to keep these fish at your holes by feeding them. And that's kind of what this tournament's all about.
A little bit more madness to the methods over there than there is in the typical U.S. fishing, it appears.
Yeah, of course, all the world competition is no electronics, so it's
Right.
nothing like what we do over here. We're hand augering and basically drilling our holes and then setting them up to bring the fish in. So when you start competition, every angler gets drawn in the morning at the captain's meeting for their sector. So I'll either draw A, B, C, D, or E, and one of my teammates is in each zone. And then so you basically have 5 tournaments going on every day, and then the judges for each zone will go down the line and check everybody's bait. You're allowed 2 liters of ground bait and 1 liter of wet bait. Our wet bait would be our bloodworms, is what we use for
Otherwise, it's
essentially,
you're
like it's like
chumming.
chumming, and then
Yeah.
and then hook bait as well. And then our ground bait is just basically flavored organic food, basically that we make different concoctions and test different scents and such like that, where we can kind of we mix it up and get it to the right consistency. We do this every morning. We basically use a mud mixer and mix a bowl, and everybody fills their 2 liter containers of ground bait, and we make different scents, different formulas, and different colors. Sometimes we're using like more of a blonde type material. Sometimes you're using a black, darker material. And there's different brands over there that we use, and
I
so
imagine you can
that
just
that's
buy this already made, or you guys are everybody's making their own, right?
well, we buy it. We buy it in the bags, but I think the biggest thing we've learned, we've had help from Latvia, Lithuania, and friends we've made over there, basically teaching us how to prepare it right. And essentially, the stuff that comes from the store, it's just like most anything to do with fishing here. We always are tinkering with our
Right.
stuff after we buy it. The bait's no different. There's bigger chunks in there. We like run it through a sieve, essentially, sift it all into a bucket. And then we take the bigger chunks and we grind them up in a grinder, put those back in, sift them through again so we don't have anything too big. The idea is that you don't want the fish to get the big pieces, because then they'll fill up too fast.
Yeah.
So you can overfeed and then shut the bite down. And then we add a few different like aromatics and some different ingredients, and just to help it disperse better in the water. And then, of course, through practice, we find out what's the most effective way to pull the fish in fast and then keep them there. So we're using top feeding, where we're making balls and dropping them down the hole, like you wet them and then try to drop it straight to fall straight down the hole. You obviously have to make a nice round ball so it falls straight and is still in your target zone below it, right at the bottom by your hole. And then sometimes we use a feeder, which is essentially we have reels with we usually put braid on them, and we have like a small plum that's like a cone. Usually they're made of brass. Most of them are homemade, with a little lead trap door. You fill it with your bait, close the trap door, and then you drop it down. And it could be right at bottom, a meter off or a couple meters off. Snap the line and it opens up, and then drops your bait right down below your hole, and then wind that in. In this case, we were bottom feeding because a lot of the fish were traveling on bottom, and then also top feeding just because it's faster. And we had checked the lake current to know that our bait was going to go straight down. All those things are huge, like checking the current and then watching the fish in practice and seeing how they're traveling. So we had basically 3 days when we got there to just fish on the lake on our own. The bay where the zones for competition were was roped off, no access. So we kind of try to find areas that we think are the same depth as what the zones are going to be. We, got familiar with the species of fish. And then when the official practice period starts, we have 3 days that are official competition days, or official practice days, where we can go around the zones, but only on the outside. They have like a neutral zone, 5 meters roped off outside of them. We can fish outside the neutral zone around the area of the zones, and not in between the short section. So if you picture them, they're like a football field.
Right.
These zones, I believe, were 130 meters by 60 meters, so they're pretty big, and they were set up end to end. And so each day we could fish like off the short end of E and the short end of A, and then the long length sides of both of them. And, we have a crew of our spotters going around with electronics they can use to make the map, check the depths. And we also made up a giant live scope pole so we could kind of peek and see what the fish were doing in there. Although the roach weren't really spot specific, they were kind of roaming around. But I mean, it gives us a visual of how those fish are traveling. So then, yeah, those practice days, the official practice days, they actually sound a horn when you can start drilling. So all the teams are out there on the lake. Say they start at 10 o'clock, and we can drill. They sound an air horn. We can start drilling, and then our practice goes till 2 o'clock, and then we're done. They blow a horn at the end. And the way we typically set it up is we take our 5 fishermen and we assign them to a zone to fish the outside lines of that zone, and just kind of get some notes and see what they think of the depth profile, and as far as we can tell from outside the neutral zone. And then after that concludes, we kind of sit down as a team and have a meeting about where we think starting spots should be for whoever draws zone A, B, C, D, E. That's kind of a quick rundown of how we prepare and get ready for that.
Let's take into paying attention to detail to a whole nother level. So especially when
Yeah,
you're blind, I mean, obviously you could use
right,
electronics early at practice, but you're not using them on your fish in a sense. But
right.
that's because they don't want you pre-chumming, I suppose, the hole that you're going to fish in the tournament and attract everything into your area, right?
Yeah, it seems like if the zones are set up, there may be like a deep side or a deep corner. Traditionally we've learned that, we've learned by getting beat by it, that during these competitions, you figure, okay, now if I have this stretch of zones that people can fish around the perimeter for 3 days, they're going to set up holes. Everybody that's practicing is setting up holes and baiting around the perimeter. So all that food has been dropped around the perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you start? You usually start on the line, one of the lines on the zone, because the fish are going to be somewhere around all the bait that's been dumped down there for the last 3 days.
Yep.
So typically you're starting on a line, and then you think about each angler in a zone has 2 markers of their flag, right? So I'll carry 2 USA markers that they give me for my zone that have my zone and American flag on it. And each one of those, I have like 5 meter buffer. So the judges that are in my zone will have a 5 meter tape, a length of rope. And if I'm catching, people will come and try to measure off of me 5 meters. So I have I have basically 2 spots that I can block. Usually we drill a lot of extra holes, but in this one, we were drilling hand augering ice that was like 54 inches.
Oh,
So,
Jesus.
I mean, I'm starting where I could barely reach the top handle on my auger. So spinning holes took, probably about 40 seconds a hole. But I mean, it's some work,
How big are the holes?
So
Are you're only doing like 4 or 6 inch holes, right?
this is about, 130 millimeters. That's about, a 5 inch hole. So it's using about a 5 inch hole. Just because there was usually we use a 4 inch hole, but there were some big fish in this lake and it would have sucked to get a kicker on and
Right.
not be able to land it. So yeah, so we're thinking about where we think the fish are going to be sitting, and that's where some of the countries use live scope. Obviously you can't use it in the competition, but it was interesting to see where they were sitting in the morning, looking from the outside into the zones each day, and then sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. Mostly it had to do with like the depth. They were gravitating towards the deeper water. So like say my day 2 zone, everyone was fighting for one corner because it was like the 34-foot deepest corner. And I studied that map, on the bus ride. We had about an hour bus ride every day to the lake and just sat and studied it and how I knew everyone was going to go stand in the corner. And then on the first horn, they're going to jump in the corner to plant their flag, and it's going to be shouting match. And, they video it and go through instant replay to
Is
see
it
who
just
got
like
the
a
flag.
race, shotgun start? You're all lined
Well,
up and go, or what?
so after they check our bait, they'll do they do bait inspection and check our bait and tackle, and then they release us to go into the neutral zone around the zone. So then that's where everyone runs to that corner. But I mean, you don't really have to run, because if I go to that corner, I'm waiting essentially where you can start drilling. So the first one is just get in and plant your first flag and get ready to where you're going to be in your first hole. So typically what they'll do then in that 5 minutes, they're measuring everybody off and see how they fit in there. And if it's mathematically blocked, then they can do a coin toss, or they'll look at usually they video it and have somebody video it, and they go through the replay to see who was down first. So you know how I am. I mean, that's probably my biggest
Replays and
weakness.
fishing.
I'm not sometimes I think I'm not cutthroat enough for this. This is really a cutthroat competition, and I kind of try to think, okay, everybody's trying to get that corner, but what I did is I looked at how that break cut the corner of that zone, and I knew I had on the inside line of my zone, I had like a 33, a 32.8 next to that 34 that cut in pretty deep down the middle of the zone, and I'm like, if I get right in the foot of that and they all drill right on that break, there's a good chance that some of those fish will push. They'll hit the foot of that break and then bounce one way or the other. But if I have my bait down, I'm going to be on them right away. So I kind of gambled on that, knowing we wanted the corner. Everybody wanted the corner. I'm like, well, I'm going to gamble, take the break. And then I'm going to cut diagonally across the zone after my first hole is drilled, and drill another one like on the opposite end on the long side where that break hits over there. That was kind of what I was trying to do. So I drilled those 2 holes. My first hole was firing right away. I'd get like 7 or 8 bites. And I'm dropping food. I got my food in a side pouch, so I'm just dropping a pinch down the hole or dropping a small ball, like almost probably a little less than a ping pong ball. And when they check our bait, our wet bait and our ground bait, then I mix bloodworms in with the ground bait, so it's like a ball of earth with the
Oh.
worms in it. You drop that down, so I have a plume coming down from my hole in a steady stream, and I try to keep up a steady stream of bait going down the hole to keep the fish there active. And I started on them. I probably got 4 or 5 right off the initial. After I had my 2 holes done, went back, fished my first one, got some bites. Then I bounced to my second one, no bites there yet. Fed it again anyway. Back to my first one, catch, 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 catch. Back to my other one, and they're probably, I don't know, 30 to 40 yards apart. And I'm, sprinting in between, sprint, back, catch, go back. Now I'm trying to get that second one fired up. I'm talking to my spotter about, okay, if this one doesn't go, where should I drill my next one, right? Because what I want is to be able to bounce, catch, feed, and just keep catching and not, because when my one stops, I don't want to wait for fish to be there. I want to have another hole that's working.
Excuse me. So the spotter's just keeping eyes on everything
Everything
that
that's
else
going
is
on.
going on, and
Yeah.
he can be like, Nick, they're moving over here.
Yeah. So I see Ukraine down the line by my second hole, further down, starting to catch. And I'm like, all right, go down there, and stand down there because I'm going to drill one down there if I don't get them on my next bounce. So I had bounced that bad hole like 3 or 4 times, hadn't got them, and then I'm like, all right. The Lithuanian on the inside of me on the line, 5 meters in, he started just cracking them. And then the guy, both guys kitty corner to me, 5 meters are getting them. So I know there's fish close to that hole. And I said to my spotter, I'm like, all right, before I abandon this, I'm going to try something. And I kind of went, and I've seen this fail where you put too much food down, but I made like a freaking baseball of ground bait, just a giant bomb, and packed it
You're all in
packed it
here.
real tight. I had to put both hands in the hole, and then you kind of got to squeeze it and like let the water suck into it, and then carefully drop it to go straight down. I thought I'm just gonna try it because sometimes if you do that, you can either wreck his fish or steal him, because he's going to be bouncing. So he left that hole right as I dropped that bomb down. And then I went back to my first hole, caught, my typical 5 or 6 bites that were there, bang, 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 bang. As soon as I get a down, up, down, and I don't have a bite, hand wrap my line, and then I go to that new hole where I dropped a bomb, and I just started crushing them there. So it worked. I stole, and then Davidis, the guy from Lithuania, he went back to his hole, and they weren't there. So I successfully stole his fish. The guy that was on the gold medal.
That's hilarious.
And yeah, it's we're learning.
That's a game.
We're learning. It's like a chess match. There's so much more to it
Yeah.
than fishing, and some of these kind of tactics we're just starting to learn. After a decade of it, because you figure we get a week or two of practice of this a year, and they're doing it all winter, their whole ice fishing life.
Right.
So this year, we 4 of us on our own dime went to Latvia a month ahead just to practice on some of those species of fish. Obviously we're only halfway to Mongolia, but at least we could catch roach, redfin,
Right.
bream, some of the species and we competed in a Latvian tournament over there when they were doing their qualifiers for their national team. So it's good to have friends that from Latvia that invited us to come fish over there, and Lithuania's done the same thing. And you find from this stuff 10 years, a lot of the guys, there's guys that are involved with all the teams that have been there as long as I have, and you make good friends, and everybody's the same all over. The Eastern European,
Yep.
Mongolia, these guys, they all do the same stuff we do. They're outdoors people that love to fish, hunt, gather. It's just really a really cool experience.
It's fishing's fishing no matter where
Right,
you're at
right.
in the world, right? I've
Absolutely,
been
absolutely.
to Kyrgyzstan and some of these places in the military, and it's no matter what country you're in, everybody's still there's somebody fishing or somebody that wants to, or you can find a hook and a line somewhere.
Absolutely, absolutely, and
And
that country's breathtaking. Mongolia is a lot more breathtaking than what I would have expected. I guess I never really thought about it that much, but it is a really beautiful country, and we got some good contacts, and hoping to maybe go back sometime to do the taimen fishing. They have the largest salmonid in the world there, and we were sadly very close to a river that has really, really good taimen fishing, like over 100-pound fish, and just couldn't quite make it happen in our window of time that we had. So
that's that's interesting. That's pretty well mind blowing stuff, and obviously a lot of gamesmanship in it. And
yeah,
like you said, you've been doing it for a long time, and that's exactly what it takes is years of experience targeting species that you don't get over here. And so you're
right.
trying to learn that. I mean, the internet's great, and there's so much stuff out there, but there isn't a ton of stuff, on these. I imagine. I mean, other countries are putting out things too, maybe, and I just don't see
It's a
it.
niche. It's a niche discipline. The discipline's different than here. People see stuff in the United States and they say, "Yeah, we're fishing for minnows," and that's definitely not always the case. It's just a different kind of competition than what people are used to here. Usually, we have the luxury here of just trying to get 5 big ones in a day, and in this tournament, like what I was just explaining, you can't have any downtime because if everyone starts catching and you're not catching, it's hard to dig out of a hole, and
I was reading this morning. Seaguar just released a new line, one of their Japanese lines, which a lot of our products people probably don't realize are made in Asia and China and
correct.
Japan and whatever. And they've been using and they use stuff over there that we haven't seen or used ever. And then eventually they'll get released over here and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. With the new lines, we have so much access and opportunity. People still complain and bitch about it, but compared to some of these other countries, they don't have the access and the opportunities this many bodies of waters, and if they do, those are super highly pressured fisheries.
Right.
So they're taking some of that seaguar line, and now they've said, hey, this stuff, these guys are fishing on super high pressured stuff. Here's what we use, and this is so now you bring that over here, and you're like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
The visible line or a super thin or just different type of things, and that's so you see the bass get some of these anglers from Japan come over and do well because they're used to having to fish super finesse and super just different styles and tactics due to the high pressure type of fisheries they have. Then they come here and they're like, oh, this is easy,
Yeah.
somewhat. Oh,
Yeah,
it
it's
is it's
crazy.
pretty cool.
It is interesting how you definitely get a different perspective. Even we try to go to as many tackle shops as we can over there and just get a different, kind of see what perspective of what's available. And you do see stuff line hook wise that's different, and get a chance to sample some different stuff to try over here. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But
That is super cool, and that's just the world ice fishing. You've been doing the USA Predator team for a few years. Like you're the captain of that team, even, which makes all the sense in the world since you were the seasoned American angler here. How is that? So that now we're not on ice, we're in open water. How does that kind of roll out with the Predator fishing?
so the Predator Cup was kind of rolled out to me from the USA Angling, who govern USA Bass. We have a fly fishing team. Obviously the carp and feeder stuff, street fishing, and we had the ice team's been going here, I believe, since about 2008. I think is when US started an ice team. I joined in 14, obviously, because of my link to fishing the tour. They had approached me about potentially starting a predator team, because there's always a World Predator Cup. It's called Carnivorous Angling in Boats, is technically what FIPSED calls it, the governing body. And I was basically told that the primary species are the redfin perch, zander, and pike. And I thought, well, sure, we'll give it a go. I mean,
Pretty relatable.
if there's going to be a predator team, I thought, well, we might as well get some walleye anglers involved. So I started kind of putting my feelers out to a bunch of different groups, and to see what kind of response I would get. And I had a handful of people interested, and we went to the first one in England, and then we've done Czech Republic, and then last year we did Latvia, and now this coming year it's in Ireland, and just been recently been planning a family trip to Ireland for August to try to do some scouting, because we've learned over the last few, yeah, I mean, we're all competitive guys. I got right now the team that I fished with the last 2 years was my partner Ryan Buddy from Ohio, who's obviously doing really well on the Lake Erie Walleye Trail over there, and then the other boat was Max Wilson and John Hoyer, who obviously have been at the top of the game in the NWT world. So I'm not worried at all about our fishing skills, but we've learned after the last couple of years with that team. We go over there. These other countries are living on the venue for over a month, most of
Oh,
them.
geez.
So, and we're usually getting the 2 official practice days, which ends up to be about 14 hours for us with 2 boats, and competing against people that have been on that venue for a month. So we've kind of decided if we're going to continue doing it, we have to set the precedent of practice. It's kind of like same with ice, is that we can't expect to just go fish, and be happy to be there. If we want to do well, we're going to have to put more into it. And it is hard because most of this,
You're
like you
out
say, we're doing this
self-funded.
on our own dime, and there's
Yeah.
no money to win. I mean, I say there's no money to win, and I'm like, well, my silver medal from Mongolia now, I mean, that's just as important to me as any hardware, or winning a
Yeah.
boat or winning 35 grand in the United States. It's just something that I can hang my hat on. And I mean, it means a lot to me. All these guys obviously are patriotic guys, and they wouldn't be doing it if it didn't mean a lot to them just to fish for a medal for the United States. So we want to bring that to a high standard. So we're all looking at spacing out in different times where we're going to go practice over there, and get some practice in, and see if we can have a better outcome over there with that too.
That is that's awesome. I'm glad we're sending the best out there to represent, and I think it's gonna pay off, and those silvers are gonna turn into gold, and you're gonna get to raise that flag and sit on that podium. And as a former military guy, I get it. I get the pride and the. It's not
Oh,
about the money. It's about representing,
absolutely.
and kind of sticking it to some of these other countries sometimes. So
Yeah, I mean, just being up there and hearing our anthem it gives you the chills,
yeah,
right?
it
And
does.
it was unbelievable to be up there, and now it makes you kind of wanting more. And yeah, with the Predator team, another thing, we're we're looking at typically what most of the countries do is they have their two teams that fish, and they also bring a reserve boat. So we can technically bring six, and two get to fish. What we could run it as is, the two primary boats start after the first day or after the second day. The low boat swaps out with the reserve boat, but that would give us some way to kind of. Also, I'm toying around with the idea of maybe doing some kind of a tryout if we have six, during the pre-practice period. Do some kind of a tryout over there. I'd like to get it where I could have tryouts and have open tryouts for the Predator team, and I have some ideas that I'm going to talk to some of our governing bodies in the walleye world, maybe talk to the MPA a little bit, or AIM board, or anybody, and really see what we can do to get some more people involved. The problem is, like I say, it's mostly volunteer stuff, but I would like to have it as open, and anybody that really wants an opportunity to be able to have an opportunity, such as, like, we have wide open tryouts for ice. That's anybody can walk in and go to those tryouts and go to the ice. So
Yeah, we need to open up. Get the exposure out there bigger on this, so you get a better pool of anglers. Not necessarily better. You have great anglers in it already, but a wider pool.
yeah,
Cast a bigger net, pun intended, to get the people in there. And then obviously we want industry people to see this, so we don't have to be so self-funded, and it can help
yeah,
out a little along the way, because that's going to increase your pre-fishing, right, and all your practice, considerably, if a guy doesn't have to spend thousands of dollars out of his own pocket. So,
yeah, yeah, and I think probably the hardest thing about it is that the ideal practice would be having tryouts on the venue where we're going to be
yeah,
fishing, because what we run into the fact that, okay, so I come over here, we have a tournament, and you beat me in a tournament here on Pike, and then you go there, and if I don't go, it's hard to pass on the knowledge that I have already gained after 4 years
yeah.
of fishing for these fish, and that's the trouble we get into. But it usually hashes itself out. Like ice, we've had 20 people show up there, but like in the last one, the four of us that were in the Michigan tryouts were the five guys on the team were the top four. you know so these once you know those techniques, yeah, we'll still be hard to beat. I've always said, if someone can come in and beat me, I'll happily stand back and spot. But same thing with this stuff. It's hard to have a tournament here to practice for species of fish that we're not fishing for.
Right, and even if they're, I mean, as Andrew, people think it's the same as a walleye and your redfin. I mean, but they're not. This
Yeah,
is
so we're
different water temps, different type of structure, current. I mean,
yeah,
gravitational pull. Everything's different. It's just not the same.
yeah. It's so the logistics of having tryouts overseas is also tough when you're talking about people spending their own money. So
Yep.
all the way about it, it's kind of a slow and steady, feel our way through it and try and make it a little bit better, a little bit more legit every time we go through it. So,
But you're investing in yourself, and if it's a bucket list thing for people, it's tryouts over there. You're still checking that bucket
yep,
list box, and if you get it dialed and you figured it out and you're good to go, you make the team. If not,
yep,
this is my annual vacation that I planned for, and either way, I'm sure it's a good time, and you learned a ton, and maybe they hang around and support the team that's there. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I, I kind of want to be involved. So, I mean, I could also step back, be president, and be the
right.
delegate. I go to the meetings, go to all the delegate meetings. There's a lot of stuff that goes along with this that the functions, and having the experience with that. That would be, even if I didn't fish, I'd definitely go along and help everybody out on that front. So, but yeah, it's a
It's
great
a
experience. Great
great
experience for sure.
experience. A lot of work, a lot of logistical things to deal with and have. I mean, way outside of fishing, you got a crap ton of planning and prep that goes into that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're trying to ship gear to somewhere like Mongolia. we
yeah,
had we had a lot of help from a good friend who has a supply house for fishing tackle in Latvia, and he was the one who spearheaded inviting us to come practice there. And then he actually had us put together 10 pairs of boots, 10 hand augers from his company that he donated to us. So all of our boots are augers, and then also we bought a pile of ground bait and boxed all that up. He put all that in a shipping container and got it to Mongolia for us. So that helped a lot. I mean, that was a
yeah.
lot of that took a lot of stress off us while we were there to let us focus more on the fishing and not have to worry about all that crap. So it helped out a lot.
That is, yeah, that's big. That's awesome of him to do that. So circle back to we're back to the United States now. What's Nick going to fish this year? What circuits and where are we
Yeah,
going?
I'm
I think you said you're off to Spring Valley, aren't you?
yeah I'm gonna leave tomorrow and head down and fish Spring Valley with Jake Lapine, one of the guys I
Mm-hmm.
travel with, and I really like river fishing. I've always started out
Me
river
too.
fishing. It kind of goes back to my roots. I grew up in Oshkosh and always started fishing on the river first. And when I started tournament fishing, my first tournament of the year was always the league event on Petenwell. And that was another, Wisconsin River event that I grew up fishing that. So it just feels right to go to Spring Valley. I've only been doing it for like 3 years now. Jake's been fishing there for about 20. And a lot of guys kind of go me about catching saugers, but man, I love it. I love a river tournament. I love
Me
the
too.
the chess match of kind of figuring out what flow those bigger fish want to be in. I think there's a lot
Yep.
more to it than what people think, and I like finding those little seams where, yep, that's where those hens want to sit, and it's not so chance as much as everyone thinks. And
Not
so,
at all. And sauger
so
hit hard.
yeah,
Sauger's a strong fish.
yeah, they're cool fish. I mean, we might not
I think
catching
they're super cool.
anything over 4 pounds in that event unless we get a big lucky and get a big walleye. But I enjoy it. I think it'll be a fun tournament. It looks like the river's going to settle down. It's just coming down now and should be to a really good level for a really good bite when we get there.
Yeah, that's always the iffy thing about that tournament. It's the first one, ice out, weather. I mean, you fished, last year with the NWT started off the year there, and it was the MWC hit it on the horrible days of the weather. I mean, I
Right.
saw so many guys on day two that were coming in early, like real early,
It was a
and
bit
they'd said,
cold.
"Well, yeah," they're like, "I'm out. My line's covered in crap," and I think 20 boats didn't even go out the second day because they
Yeah.
were kind of out of it, and your motors are. I mean, you're breaking stuff. I get it. Weather was good for us, though. I think we had. I mean, it's cold, but it's March. What the hell do you
Yeah.
expect, right?
Yeah, that was my first big event there, fishing the tour event there last year, and it kind of bittersweet. I mean, it was one of those things where you look at a sign of the times. I can tell you that I looked at that finish, and I worked my butt off, and I flip flopped the way I did things. I kind of gambled a little bit and then flip flopped, and it worked out a little better the next day. I think we had 118 boats on the tour event last year,
Sounds about right.
and I took 26th. And I think that was the first time in my career that a 26th out of that many boats wasn't a check. And I'm like, boy, this stuff's getting tough.
It is
So
getting
that's a
tough.
lot of work. That was a lot of work and two really hard fought limits to not get
Yeah, it
paid. So
it sucks when you get to a place you can coal and you don't get a coal because you can't
yeah,
catch enough fish.
yeah,
So I did coal, fortunately, but I think I got ninth there. Um, yeah, same deal. Love rivers.
yeah,
Put me on a river anytime. I got a much better confidence. And growing up on rivers is, that I like it. There's
yeah,
a lot of spot on spots in rivers. There's a lot of different things. You got to be very versatile. You got to be quick to make those decisions, which all tournament is, because fish move a hell of a lot more on a river.
yeah.
You know,
So that'll be my start. I'm gonna probably go out and fish Erie for the tour event. As of right now, I haven't committed to doing all the tour events. I'm you know, mixed emotions on how some of them are going to go with the limit.
Yeah.
It obviously be hard for me not to fish Green Bay. I'll probably fish Green Bay at Erie. The Mississippi River one, I don't know. It's going to be that's a tough date for me this year.
Yeah.
My middle daughter's graduation is that during that, and I'm not that far. I might be able to make it back, so we'll see. Again, that's probably one of the toughest ones with again talking about river tournaments. I love fishing that river. Glad
Mm-hmm.
to go to Mississippi River, but fishing with 3 unders, 1/20 inches is just it's tough. I mean that's a that's a tough set of rules to fish that river.
Because there's
Because
a
the
lot of
guy,
big fish in there.
yeah, and you potentially you catch things in the right order, you look like a hero, but then potentially you catch a 23, 24 incher, box that, and then end up letting go a 28, 29.
Yeah.
It just seems like as much as I don't like saying that any of it's ever luck, but definitely you could do really well in that tournament catching walleyes and not do well in the tournament, which
Yep.
is tough. It's tough. It's a tough scenario.
It's a mental game. This whole season is going to be: did you keep the right fish? Now, did you
Right.
catch them? Did you keep
Yeah.
the right fish? Period. And it's
Yeah.
gambling, which it is anyway, in a sense, but it's
It
making those
makes it a
right
lot
calls,
more
and
gambling. With the
it
one
makes it
over
a hell of
20
a
makes it
a
a
lot more
lot.
stressful.
The 1/20 with no call is probably the hardest part about it. I think catching those 18s and 19s, guys can, you can do that, do your job. Okay, I found those fish. I'm going to catch my 18s and 19s. But now, how big is big, and knowing you have to be done.
You got to get one. You got to get one, and then you're done, right? And
Yeah.
it's a big
So,
deal if you could keep two, but that's the same rules we have here in South
and
Dakota
then if you
for
get your big
for
one
law.
first, you get your big one first, and still are fishing for your unders, and then catch a giant one and have to let it go. That's just brutal.
Yeah, that's
It's
a kick in
brutal.
the stuff. Yep, and it's going to happen. You're going to hear all the stories on
Gonna
stages.
happen.
I kept this, and then I caught a 30 incher and had a throwback. And I mean, the locals obviously have a little upper hand on any river because they know where kind of is what. But I've heard from a lot of them that aren't going to fish it because they said there's no advantage. On Brett King's podcast, he touched on that. They don't feel like they have an advantage because they said everybody can catch the one, but
Right.
it's catching two is a little tricky,
Right.
and that kind of took away their upper hand, so they aren't jumping in on it. But we'll see. That may change. As time
Yeah.
gets closer and they're on something, they might be like, all right, I'm getting in because I know I can go get an 8-9 pounder consistently. Which I haven't fished that part of the river, but I know they're there. They
Right.
definitely hold them.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be a huge. The whole season's going to be like that. It's a did
Yeah.
you keep the right fish?
At least 3 of them, it looks like, are
Yep.
going to be kind of about keeping the right fish, and that'll be hard. And I don't know. It's like uncharted water. We kind of opened Pandora's box last year with talking about who catches
Yep.
what, and
This is what you get. Be careful what you ask for sometimes, right?
yeah, it's everyone has their, you know, everyone's kind of wondering where it's going to go and what's going to happen next. And I don't know. I mean, I can't say I like it. Um, I know I've expressed to many people that I think that a lot of things need to change. We all have. I personally would like to see a system with marshals where we're just
Right.
fishing on our own. Obviously, everyone knows I jumped ship to head in 21, and that was because I was longing for something different, and that format was fantastic, and I loved it, and I've never fished anything I've enjoyed as much as that. So here we are. This is what we have.
Yep.
And it's like everyone's like, "Oh, you should quit. Oh, and I'm like, "Oh, you should fish." I'm like, "Yeah, I should quit. I should fish." It's like guys like us. Brian, I'm sure you don't want to quit tournament
No,
fishing.
it's
You don't want
the
to
when
quit professional walleye fishing.
no.
So if this is what it is, what can we all do to make it better?
Yep.
Is that going to matter? And I don't know. I don't know what the answers are. I feel like the industry's kind of taken a dive this year. I think they're struggling. A lot of facets of our industry are struggling just by the economy being tough right now. I think that they sold everything so well during COVID,
Yep.
hired more people. Now they're not selling that much. Now people are getting laid off. It's just a tough time for the industry again. Um,
Yeah,
and
the supply
and
is back. They got the product now, but it's
so
not
now
selling like it was
they have the
then. And
product, right, and they have. It seems like every young person, everybody that picks up a fishing rod is doing something on social media now. So
you know,
they have more aspects for getting information out there and getting more clicks. And I don't know. I don't know where we play into that and how we can help grow everything, but it's definitely a tricky time right now.
it is, and I think it's people outside looking in think it's amazing and marvelous, and there's all this stuff. And Red Crest just finished. We got the Classic coming up this week. Our for whatever reason, we have a gazillion co-anglers signing up for the NWT because Cardenas does a great job of promoting the hell out of it on social. But the pro numbers, from what I understand right now, aren't there's not a whole lot of us signed up yet, which is typical because we all like to hold our money till last minute and then
Right.
sign up, which makes perfect sense until there's a system in place to where there's some incentive to pay earlier. I think the numbers will be what they'll be. I don't know if they'll be as good as last year or not, just due to that. I don't think people realize that the economy isn't quite as good as many are saying it is. And then, but there's other aspects and industries where it's thriving pretty good, and that really affects the professional walleye tour guy a lot. Fuel prices is huge, right? That's one of our biggest expenses. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, these boats they don't get 20 miles a gallon. It's you're just driving down the lake throwing dollar bills out pretty much as you're going.
Right.
So, and lodging, and as I talked to plenty of other guys on here, a lot of us work in teams, and it's really just more of the travel, the camaraderie, and being able to share and split, who's cooking dinner, and
Yeah.
being able to get a house or something for cheaper than hotel rooms when you got $200 for a whole week of lodging when you split it up, 4, 6, 8 ways.
Yep.
It Yeah, it's a challenge out there, and I don't. What can we do to? I think we just keep providing our input the best that we can. Right, where anglers are definitely doing that and being heard, but there has to be action on it on the other side of it too. Um,
Yeah.
but that will come. But I also tell people if you don't like it, don't fish it. This is
Right.
all completely on your choice. There's AIM circuit out there. There's MWCs. There's Casino Cup. If you live in North or Northern South Dakota, there's no reason to leave that area. Those are paying a ton of money in cheap entries,
Mm-hmm.
and you're fishing, good fisheries, all relatively close, and you can have 3 people on your boat if you want. Um, there's this, AIM's got the river circuit going out. There's opportunities and options out there. Exposure wise, it's you got to self create your media in a sense nowadays.
Yeah.
More or less anyway. You're going to get it. NWT's televised. I have that, and Cardenas does a good job on social stuff. So it's out there. But to advance your own personal career and stuff, you do it because you love it. But you never go into the tournament angling world think you're going to make a living because
Right.
you're not, right?
Right.
You know,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting this year. It seems like all of the different local stuff, like you said, your casino cups out that way, and then Lake Erie Walleye Trail, Michigan Walleye Trail, all are thriving. I think that
yep.
Amos will have another heck of a year here. They have a good schedule, and people are happy to do that. We have Bag of Walleye Club, a lot of local things
So,
like that, and I think we kind of went back to all the OGs on
yep.
the tour. Led that the Lake Erie in April, the Mississippi River, Green Bay. I mean,
Yep.
those are all tried and true events that always are good at pulling numbers. And I know they went there for that. A lot of people like that. I don't know. I don't know
I
what.
like,
I like a lot of variety, and
yeah, I like to go places we haven't been.
yeah, I
Let's go
would be
somewhere new. Let's go to Lake McConaughey. Let's go
mhm,
to uh, Arkansas. I can't think of the damn
right.
lake right now.
Bull shoals.
Bull Shoals. There you go.
Yeah,
Which
we
I mean,
haven't done a Minnesota natural lake in forever. Like a
no,
lead year.
Ottertail for the championship was it,
Yeah,
um, and which
yeah. I
is
guess
with the
that
new
was the year I
championship
get cut
system
ahead.
with 40 boats, we can go to these smaller lakes.
Yeah,
I
we
think that's
could.
kind of the purpose to it.
Yeah, do any of the big lakes in Minnesota. So I don't know. You know, it's. I think one of the hardest things for me this last year is just coming to the realization that a lot of the stuff that I made a career out of, is some of it's almost irrelevant with forward-facing sonar, and
Yeah,
it just is. And I hate it. I kind of, but I mean, you got to look yourself and like, okay, I I can't go pull bouncers on a break and be as efficient as I can. Just basically what I call road hunting down the break with my live scope.
Yep.
And not even bothering catching the little ones, just pitching at the nicer ones, and it's so much more efficient. So we have all this rods and tackle and technique and knowledge that yeah, there'll be a lot less pulling lead, a lot less bottom bounce for fishing, things like that. But I mean, the guys that are embracing it are the guys that are doing better right now, and you just kind of got to see it. It is what it is, and evolve with it, go with it. There's so much blah blah blah, yes or no forward facing, and like I say, it's out there. Embrace it, learn it, or don't fish. if you
No,
don't
don't
like it,
fish, or
if you
or
don't like
just
it,
keep
don't fish. Don't use it. Keep doing the
yeah,
old
or
stuff.
just
But
keep donating your money.
exactly, that's what it's
I
going to
mean,
be.
it's yeah, and this our schedule for the NWT sets up a little different this year. It's traditional troll bites, obviously Erie, and who
Yeah,
knows about
the
Huron,
river.
and the river's a little different. I know I didn't touch mine in Spring Valley with it. And I'm
Yeah,
sure
there's
you
so
guys did,
many
and you can def
non-target species in the rivers.
yeah, you're seeing everything, and you're just gonna throw it
Yeah,
sheephead all day or something. I don't know. I can't tell the different species on mine Mega Live. I just updated it, so maybe I can a little bit. But those fish move so much, you don't get a good picture of it in the small crew
right,
you got because you got it for
right.
such a brief amount of time. I I don't think they work near as effective in the rivers, but I haven't used it a lot. And maybe if I had a pole versus on the trolling motor, so the trolling motor's not moving around too much would help a little bit. But I know if you're pulling a three ways and you can watch it, the fish come up behind it, and
Yeah,
it's cool, you know, and that's
yeah,
that's neat. But I kind of like that element of surprise too. Like, I know there's fish there. It
yeah.
might
You
be
got a little old school in you, kind of like I do, and
yeah, yeah. We're not young bucks, but I'm very tech savvy and into the advancement of all those things. So I,
right.
I totally get it. It's like I said, it's a tool. You better have it. You better figure it out. And
Yep.
whether it comes into play or not on a tournament, you don't know until you get there. So
Right.
we're all, Erie's a
Yeah.
kickoff this year, and it's going to be really interesting. Does somebody, does Nick or I figure out a forward facing sonar bite, or is it back to traditional?
Yeah.
Put four offshore boards out and crank baits and try to
Yeah.
catch doubles and triples.
It'll be interesting on Lake Erie to see, if somebody puts together a forward-facing bite that could potentially be the deal there.
Yep.
And I don't know. I guess I haven't really. I spent some time with it in that last championship we had out in New York, out that way. But we'll see. And it was very effective at times, but trolling's really effective, like winding them in as fast as you can catch them. Sometimes there too. So it'll be interesting. It always
Yeah,
is. It seems like we see cool new stuff every time we go. So
yeah, we do, and that's the cool thing about tournament angling and all these awesome. Everybody's a good stick on there, right? So they're going to figure it out. You hope it's you or me or yourself or whatever the case may be, but somebody obviously always figures something out. Maybe
absolutely
it is a crankbait bite, and they're just at a different spot or a different speed or whatever it was. But ultimately, that tournament fishing is just I got to plan and be prepared to throw that out the boat as soon as I
right.
take off, because as soon as I get to where I'm going, that plan no longer seems to work
Yeah,
most time, right?
yeah. You can't script your day. That's for sure.
No, you got to listen to the fish, pay attention to details like you do in the ice fishing
Right.
championships. Let the fish tell you what they want, and then you got to just be quick to not get stuck in your ways and make adjustments.
Just
That's
keep
usually how it
hustling.
works. Yeah.
Can't tell everybody keep hustling until you figure it out. So
Yep. Spring Valley's coming up, so that'll be a good icebreaker for you, fun one. That was my first time there last year, and granted the weather was topsy turvy, but it was a river, so every day.
sure.
What's nice is the wind's never really a big concern,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's coming upstream. But there's so many places, and just rivers are just. I thought it was kind of fun. It was dirty water, and we weren't smashing the fish, kind of like thought maybe would be. But part of that was because the weather was miserable until tournament day, but I didn't think it was going to go as good as it did, and I think a lot of us that were even in the top 10 were kind of surprised, like, oh, that's good enough, but it wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't a great bite. So
Yeah. I kind of burned up some of my unicorns the day before the tournament. I had a big wave of fish move in further south than almost anybody ran, and had to take a chance and go down there. They didn't go. I came back scrambling, got a limit, and I had a small limit the first day, and I thought, I was very happy with that because the gamble I made, I could easily got burned. I
Yeah.
came up, it was happy to get 5. And then the second day I did it reverse order. I went and ground my 5 out in the limit spot up top, and then I went down and I was able to get a couple of good upgrades. They weren't giants, but they're enough to, like I say, bump me up into
Well, females. That's
26
what
out
you
of
need.
118 for a gamble tournament, where I thought if those south ones really go and I get 5 a day, I'm going to win by a mile, So it just, for not working out, that's not a disaster. That was a good start to the year. And we'd just taken a 12th in that MWC and cashed a check there. So I don't know. Hopefully we can go put it together this week and catch some big chubby ones down there.
So you were like literally out of a check 1 or 2 spots probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
must have
sucks.
paid
I've been
about
that guy.
23 or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that always sucks. Yeah, I had to went to a spot that caught a couple of practice. Went, I don't know, maybe probably go there. I think Hummel fished there. It ended up being a lot of people fishing that flat by the grain rock elevator thing, whatever the hell
Sure.
it is down there. Pulling lead though, most people weren't. But it was females. I was catching, pre-spawn females. But then day 2, still caught them, but they weren't pre-spawn females no more. All of a sudden, the males. So either they left and the males were first in and first last out.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that sucks. And from I think 5th to 9th or something like that, I would have just got 1 or 2 more of those females. But it was a little tougher for Corb's fishing there, Max was fishing there. And there was a lot of fish that were caught there. I think 2 or 3 of the top 10 teams were out of there. But so we had some spots south, had some spots north. Obviously, where JJ got his big one, I caught some up there and saw it too. But I thought everybody's going to come up here and do this. These fish are going to get the crap beat out of them. But I did catch a walleye at practice up there. So I thought, well, that's a big advantage here. But nope, not too many of them were caught. So
yeah, it's still tough to target them there. It seems like that top section. Usually, if a few come, that's where they come from. But it's still hard to target them when only a handful are caught in the whole event.
Yep. I got an 18, and it was up there. And actually, I caught it up there pulling lead on that inside channel where there's less current. Caught 1 or 2 of them there. They were an extra pound almost. I mean, they were fat.
Right.
So I was like, all right, but never made the run up there, and was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Wasn't as consistent. You go north or south, you kind of commit. You can make it. That place wasn't super big, but
yeah, it was a lot. I ran a lot. Like I say, I was happy to get what I got with the amount of running around I did. But yeah, I busted 2 for 8 pounds that last practice day in the spot that I wanted to start in, like right away, and just got out of there. But couldn't get that. It burned up that lucky unicorn walleye. I had about 4.5 pound walleye and a 3.5 pound sauger, like back to back in that spot, and it seemed like there was a lot of them there, and I just left it be. And then in the morning, of course, they weren't there.
Yeah, that sucks about rivers, and that's it. That was the bite. That was the winning bite you were on right there, basically.
Right.
It was easy, no doubt about it. And then typical river fish, you run 20 miles one way to get there to go. Oh, come on, man, where did you go?
Yeah, I left there. At 10:30 with nothing. So then you got to come back and start over where everybody's been beating them up all day, and like I say, just a relief to get 5 in the boat at that point.
Yep. So. There was a lot of struggles to get limits, but you guys will have a blast there. Hopefully the weather's good for you this year, and it's just good to get that first tournament out of the way. We got ours coming up here at our Cedar Shore event, April, I think 6th and 7th. We got crap weather moving in for the next 2 weeks, but catching 5 fish here isn't a problem at all. It's getting those 2 over 20s and how big, if you crack that 8 or 10 pounder, you always win. But we've changed it from a 1 to a 2 day or 2 1-day tournament type deal. So I'm more of a consistency pays type guy. That 12, 15 pounds a day is gonna do you well. But just like any of those Mississippi, same way, where you can have 1 over 20.
Yeah.
You crack them big ones, that's it. Now it's yours to lose, right? Just don't screw it up. Don't come in with 1 fish.
And hopefully we get some good weather going into Erie. That'll be a fun first tour event, and hopefully we get some favorable weather and the wind isn't all up, and we get some big weight.
I want to be out there now. There's just crushing them, and they're fat. The pre-spawn, we're probably going to end up with some post-spawn fish, and I want to go now.
It always looks like that, and I don't know if it got stirred up. I know that Michigan Walleye Tour had an event this last weekend, and they had a really bad bite on the Saginaw River because they had
Oh
some
yeah.
a hard north blow and turned it to mud, and almost half the field zeroed. And I don't I don't know if anybody caught limits both days, even the
Really.
winner. So yeah, that's how it can get over there. Everyone sees the Lake Erie beatdown going on like all winter, all fall, all winter, and then we'll get there and hopefully not have a big blow and come. Where I mean, we've seen it where 15 to
Oh
20 pounds is good because it's just a mud pit,
yeah.
and
It turns into mud. It's
everyone's
game
going, "What's
over.
going on? Can't those guys catch them?"
Yep.
But
No,
the locals don't fish in that weather; they know better. So
yep. It goes to mud. It's a whole new game. It's no good.
yeah, hopefully we get some clean water to fish out there, and we can put on a pretty good show and catch some
That'll
big ones.
that'll be a good show. It's 40 plus pounds a day is probably where you're going to need to be to compete.
Yeah,
Assuming maybe it's kind of gone down a little bit last few years, but right now it looks like you're going to need at least that. So
mid 30s at least. Yeah,
yeah, I'd say
depending
maybe
on
mid
how things
thirties.
shake
Yeah,
down.
close spawn. Awesome. That's an absolute plethora of stuff, and there's a reason we call Nick the America's Angler because they do traveling all over the world, getting it done and representing. Chatting for we're going on a little over an hour here. Let's wrap this thing up. He's probably got some passports to go get stamped or something somewhere. He's got things to do. What?
Taxes, taxes.
Yeah, taxes. Yeah, I
Brian,
did
everyone's
mine
got to
already.
finish their taxes right now. Yeah,
Yeah, Texas suck. So for
taxes
any
suck.
small business owner, especially, I do mine. I do all my own stuff. I went into QuickBooks a few years ago, and thank
Yeah,
God, it's just come the end of the year. I can kind of export this and this. It tells me where I'm
yeah.
at, quarterly stuff, and it still spends. I usually do it during the classic. I'll sit at home and watch it and spend the entire
There you go.
2 days doing it. But I did it weeks ago, and I'm going to the classic, so I didn't want to. I got it done, so it's done and in the past. But it's taxes, and it never goes away, unfortunately. So,
Right.
and I in Spring Valley, so I had to. I do got to send the great state of Illinois some money for winning money in Spring Valley last
Yeah.
year. So thanks, but North Dakota wanted more money and don't owe them nothing because their tax bracket's so much different. So,
Yeah.
but that's Illinois for you. Anywho, what leave our listeners with one little tip or nugget to help them on their angling career or profession, whatever. What you got to offer them, Nick?
Well, when I had my best day of the two at Mongolia, it was visualization. That's what I always say. Try to visualize how the fish are sitting, and that's probably one of the things that I say and do most ice and open water is try to picture how those fish are facing in the current, and always like see in your head your presentation and the fish looking at it, and think of whether they're feeding up or down, and just visualize those breaks. Look into the water and visualize where that break is, where the foot of that break is, and that's probably the best. One of the quick ones off the top of my head that I like to talk about is visualization. So
No, and I can tell you, folks, from pre-fishing, I've been around Nick. I've seen Nick fish. I've watched him on his head-to-head. Very smart, very methodical, and I can guarantee he's watching that, visualizing that fish bite his bait.
hmm
And then it's immediately he's thinking, why? What did I do? How did I do it? Paying attention to every detail when that thing bit, and that's what makes Nick Shertz America's Angler and getting it done, man. Because
thanks, Brian.
you are a cool cat on that and a smart man. And for those that don't pay attention to those details, they're missing a lot of fish. And I think that ice fishing stuff, I mean, that it just makes you better
Yeah, I
at
think
what you're doing.
the more diverse background you get, discipline. It's sometimes I get like, okay, I'm jack of all trades, master of none, but I don't know.
Right?
That's kind of my MO. I'm going a
Yep.
million different
Nope.
directions, and that's what defines me. So
Nope.
that's what I'm going
I
to
feel you.
continue. I'm not going to give anything up, and I know sometimes it makes it harder when I'm not focusing on open water because I'm doing this, but that's just what defines me. I'm very driven archer, bow hunter, traveling all over. Ran up to Alaska, shot a big caribou in the fall, and those kind of trips, do-it-yourself hunting trips, bow hunting here, taking all my kids, 3 kids, all shooting deer. My whole family playing a part in that, and we embrace hunting, we embrace ice fishing, we embrace open water season, and that's just how I roll. So,
That's awesome. That's the most rewarding you can get when you figure it out and do it yourself,
yep, absolutely.
especially. when you can get the kids and the whole family involved. That's not enough of it going on nowadays.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So,
All right.
all right, thanks. So, thanks a ton for your time today, Nick. Appreciate it. Awesome, awesome stuff, folks. And if you are watching this, you're watching it over on the Walleye Guys YouTube page or the Walleye Guys Facebook page, and you can pick this up on any of those podcast platforms out there: Amazon, Spotify, Google, Apple, and I'm probably missing one or two, but they're over there. So, check Nick out. Follow along. Look up the American predator teams, the world ice fishing competitions. I'll look that stuff up and put some links to some of those down below so people can find out some more information about that. And that's a wrap, folks. So thanks for following along today and listening to Nick break down the national world of fishing for us. So stay tuned, and we will see you on the water.